Jamie McFadden from Groundswell joins us. Jamie, good morning to you. Where are you based, by the way?
Hello there. Pardon?
Where do you live? Where are you based?
North Canterbury, a little town called Cheviot.
I know Cheviot. Yes.
Yes.
In fact,
little rural town.
The wind blows, that nor'wester blows through you. Boy, oh boy, does it what?
Oh, well, we've had the southerly the last couple of days, and it's a gum tree's gone over and squashed our sheep yards. So we get wind from all directions here.
Yeah, no, it's a nice little place. It's got a nice little cafe, as I remember.
Yes. Yep.
And the reason I remember it is because we were driving. We were a bunch of varsity students driving up to some sort of sporting tourney. Car broke down, and this very kind man in the garage took pity on us, took our van in, fixed it, and saw us on our way. So
okay, yeah, that'd be Cheviot.
It is, yes, it is. Nice group of people. Okay, now Groundswell have broken the story in Facebook. I would have expected this in actual fact, and I'm sure it will go national event soon. I hope the mainstream media pick it up. Well, they don't seem to like you guys. It's probably because you're anti everything to do with Three Waters, and we all know that the Public Interest Journalism Fund gives many in the mainstream media a reason not to cover issues like that properly.
Yeah.
Can I ask the obvious question? The West Coast issue is bad. We've talked about it on the show this morning. I read out one of the letters that was sent out to one of your farmers, or one of the farmers over there. How significant is this, though, throughout the entire country?
Okay, well, in the last 24 hours, I've had contact, phone calls, messages from Waitaki, Wellington, Auckland, you name it. It's all around the country. It is all around the country.
Yes, we've just had a call this morning from somebody in Hamilton, for example, who lives pretty adjacent to the Hamilton City Council. Yep.
And it stems from the Resource Management Act and changes being made by the government to legislation like the Indigenous Biodiversity, Freshwater, the different policies. So it all stems from government legislation.
Right. And so they're using as I was explaining before, they don't need to take these things through Parliament. They don't need to be subject to public scrutiny there. They promulgate national standards and regulations, and then use, are you saying, in this particular case, Resource Management Act to give them the power to do so?
Yeah, essentially what's happening, and it's been happening for quite some time. SNAs has been around for a long time. It came in when the Resource Management Act came in the 1990s.
Yeah.
And we were one of the first properties affected by SNAs in 1994. So we were 120 hectares. So we've had a long history in this issue. But essentially what's happening is the government have produced legislation that is resulting in the takeover of control of land, and it is being done through national legislation, but the agents to do it are the councils. And what's happening is quite a few of the councils are squirming and saying they're not really happy with this because they're getting more and more directives from the central government to push these policies through.
Yes, that's right, and that's where those national policy statements require them to do so.
Yes,
I guess though the other thing, Jamie, is that councils, in this West Coast Council in particular, have just designated. Is it 1,500 different farmers have got something on their land that they now want to designate as an SNA? Have I got that right? Is that the number?
No. What's happened is that the West Coast Councils have produced a combined proposed plan.
Yeah.
And as part of that process, they have written to, we understand it's around 1,500 property owners.
Yep.
That have had one of those types of zonings mapped on their land, and that's sites of significance to Maori.
Oh, right. So it's just sites of significance to Maori at the moment.
Yep. So and then we haven't found out yet, but a number of landowners have also received letters about significant natural areas. Some have got different types of zonings. There's a number of different types of zonings and categories being applied to private land, and property owners all throughout the West Coast have received these letters, as they have indeed in other areas, and we're getting phone calls from other areas around the country that are receiving similar letters.
This is an important issue, so I'm just going to delay the news while I carry on this interview with Jamie. Jamie, the other thing also is, I guess, with the SNAs, that when I look at the letter that went out, it doesn't identify why. So if I got one of those letters saying this is an area of significance to Maori, it doesn't say to me, oh, what is that significance? Can you define it for me? It just says it is.
Correct. Now, that's what's happened in Waitaki, and property owners have rung us and said they've received similar letters, and quite a few people have their entire properties covered with this zoning. And I've just been looking last night, and you've got entire townships have been covered with the sites of significance to Maori, and the property owners are saying they've got no idea what the significance factor is, but suddenly they've had this zoning slapped on them. Now, the thing with the West Coast issue, which is particularly frightening, is that the councils have released this, but they have made it take immediate legal effect. So the rules take immediate legal effect, and there's been no prior consultation, nothing with property owners that this was coming. Bang! They've taken the control of the land, and they've applied the rules immediately.
Now, when you say they've taken control of the land, you mean they've designated it as an SNA, and that means, in practical terms, that they don't come and take it over. It just means I can't use it without going to them.
When we say takeover, it's the takeover of the control of the use of that land. Yeah. And it's not a minor issue. It's a major issue.
No. I accept that. I accept that.
When it's whole property, when it's your whole property, and each property on the West Coast has been. There's a different group of rules applied depending on what type of property you've got. And so you have to look at which category you're in to see which rules apply. But some of the property owners are saying it's quite massive in terms of the restrictions that apply to them. But the thing here is that the immediate effect of the rules, there's been no consultation process. It's just bang, slapped on them.
Well, that's exactly, and can I tell you that Ro phoned us earlier in the show today. She's from Hamilton, a farmer from Hamilton. She's had a gully designated for ecological reasons, but can't find out from the Hamilton City Council why and what its ecological value is. So it's clearly not just on the West Coast, it's throughout New Zealand that councils are responding in this way to a directive from Wellington.
Yeah, and it's coming to a head because there's so many of these different types of zonings being applied across private land. And it's also coming to a head because there's thousands of urban property owners being impacted now. Like Wellington City people are waking up suddenly that, hey, my gosh, it's not only the farmers that are being hit; we're being hit now too. So
now, if my back garden has been designated as part of an SNA, and I want to build a shed or something like that there, the practical effect is I'm not allowed to without applying to the council to get a consent to do so. Is that right?
Well, here's an example from people in Waikanae, which is north of Wellington. A lot of the houses or properties in Waikanae have had these SNA or ecological important trees identified on their properties. And here's a property owner that had a tree leaning over the neighbour's fence. They were not able to do anything to that tree without a consent, and they've got a number of these trees in their garden mapped in the council district plan. There was an issue a couple of years ago. An elderly a techie couple, they were threatened with prosecution because they got the gardening people in to do some trimming and tidying up of dead trees in their garden. And next thing they knew, the council were on to them for destroying an SNA. And it made national news at the time, but it all sort of died down. But these poor people, I mean, this is going to become more and more frequent as an issue hitting people.
The Maori issue is particularly important because it's my experience, having worked in local government, that Maori will not identify wāhi tapu. So,
correct.
And so if they're not going to identify it, but they say it's there, they won't tell you why, or it's because I don't know what the argument would have seemed to be. They're not going to tell you that. They'll tell you it's roughly there, but they won't tell you it's specific where it is. So
yeah, that's exactly what people are relaying back to us. That's what's happening with them all around the country.
Yeah. And so you end up with this huge piece all around where it's meant to be because they're not going to tell you specifically where it's there, and they're also not going to tell you why.
Correct. Yeah. That's the feedback we're getting. Yep.
So in many ways, if you like, it's a form of authoritarianism. You're making something that is affecting the individual lives of people and their private property, but you're refusing to give them the reasons why other than, well, because Maori say so. And I can tell you, there is a recipe for racial disharmony.
Yeah, it's not. It's that too. But the other thing that it's doing with all of these zonings, SNAs, what it's doing is it's turning anything that's natural, anything that's cultural, anything that's historic on your properties into a liability. So it's doing the perverse of what the legislating people writing the legislation are trying to achieve. It's doing the opposite, because now what we're getting is we're getting feedback. You only have to look at some of the Facebook comments, and people are saying, "Oh, we're going to go out there and we're going to bulldoze anything that looks like a remnant of history," and that's the shame in all this, because we should be looking at these natural areas, cultural areas as assets and actually looking after them. But this legislation does the opposite.
No, you're absolutely right. Listen, thank you for joining us. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. It's an issue that seems to be ignored by the mainstream media or characterised as somehow anti-Maori and racist. That's the other thing I've noticed.
Yeah, and that's a key message from our point of view. This has nothing to do with being anti-cultural, valuing our cultural history or valuing our natural ecosystems and looking after nature, or anything like that. It's nothing to do that. We share those aspirations. Our concerns are around the process, and you're dealing with people's lives, you're dealing with people's properties. There's just no respect in the system for people or their property.
Thank you very much for coming on to the show. Appreciate your time. Best of luck to you. We'll keep informed.